Florida's got its man. We talk college football here each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. So lock it in right here. And for the best in Florida football coverage, David Waters and Gators Breakdown. David, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Mark. Right before we came on, you saw me yawning a bit. It's been a busy few days covering these Florida Gators.
Absolutely, it has. It's not been a long search, though. So, we've seen USC go at this for 3 or 4 months, and that all broke. That's a whole other deal. But typically with a job this important, there's a pretty extensive search, a national committee put together, that sort of thing. Billy Napier seemed to be the target from get-go. Why Billy Napier? And not that the guy can't coach football. I don't think there's any question about that, but obviously it's a big leap for him. Why do you think that he was the guy?
Yeah, Mark, I was on here last week. He was the name we brought up. And I said, a lot of times when you bring that first big name up, that usually isn't the guy. It's usually some kind of smoke screen or to throw somebody off or whatever. But Billy Napier's name was pretty hot to begin with, and it stayed hot. And everything I could gather was it wasn't a smoke screen. All the smoke was real. Scott Strickland, the AD. But Mark, this started back after the South Carolina game. Dan Mullen pretty much knew he was not coming back. The conversations with Billy Napier started back then. So you go back 3 weeks ago to kind of when the ball started getting rolling here. I mean, he was identified early on as the guy that Scott Strickland wanted to go get. And Mark, I think the reason why was because there's a potential Florida needs to meet, and there's a potential there with him as well. Dan Mullen, I mean, I hate to repeat myself here, but there was the biggest question for me, even though I thought he was the right hire with Jim McElwain, was could he ever recruit at the level needed to go compete with Alabama and Georgia year in and year out? That was the biggest question I had. He was the right hire at the time. Florida needed to dig out of an offensive hole. They did that. In Dan Mullen's first 3 seasons at Florida, and he had the program on the right track a while. But you could see behind the scenes what is the projection of the program? You couldn't count on recruiting. The culture had kind of died down a little bit too in Dan Mullen's 4th year. You saw players not really giving it their all. I think they took on the approach of the head coach in Dan Mullen toward the end of his 3rd season and this 4th season here. So I think a different approach to recruiting and getting some of the top athletes in the state of Florida to stay in the state of Florida and build a different type of culture. And I've done a lot of reading on Billy Napier the last few days. I've had people on the podcast who have covered Louisiana the last 4 years to his time there, and it's his way, his approach, what he calls it, the journey of building a program. And the way he's done it at Louisiana. So he built that program from the depths of, 2-3 wins a season and now winning 10 games a year, playing in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. So, of course, there is a leap. Of course there is, going from the Sun Belt to the SEC. But he has a plan in place, a plan that has worked before. This isn't the hot name coordinator out there that Florida has done and went that route with Will Muschamp before that didn't work out. And then, Jim McElwain, a lot of people will compare it to that hire because Billy Napier and Jim McElwain are really close. They coached together at Alabama. Billy Napier went to Colorado State with Jim McElwain there. But, he went back to Alabama to learn from Nick Saban, to soak in everything he can, and then to put his own spin on it. So I think just because of where Florida was at, culturally, recruiting-wise as well, that what Billy Napier has shown, his history of being under Dabo, being under Saban, learning under those guys about how to build a program through recruiting, and do it starting there, and then being able to build the program that way. I think that's why Billy Napier was the hire for Scott Strickland.
So as you alluded to, and I touched upon right out of the gate, there's no question Billy Napier can coach a football program. He can handle personnel. He can put together the team, the game plan. He can work with his staff and do all the things required. He's won 4 consecutive division championships. And like you say, completely turned around that Louisiana program. Now he makes a leap. So is the thought process that basically if he could do it at that level, he's just going to be working with higher caliber players now and going to be able to get in different living rooms because he's got a Florida Gators shirt on?
Well, Mark, that's the same thing we thought about Dan Mullen too. So, you have to go out there and prove it, and the recruiting questions we had under Dan Mullen were legit and they never and the questions came to fruition. Those worries came to fruition about Dan Mullen's recruiting and the approach in recruiting. This is a different style of approach. This is a coach who, if you want to go back and say, eats, sleeps, breathes recruiting. He knows it's the lifeblood of a program. He's not going to go try and out scheme you just because he thinks he can. He knows he's got to go out there and get the best players. His reputation for the players he's recruited at Alabama to put on the field and go win national championships. He was in the living room of a lot of those guys that went on to win national championships at Alabama. So, Mark, it's just, Scott Strickland identified what this program needed, and he came out and said it. It's a sustainable fit. Sustainable to me means you got to go out here and recruit the guys to come in year after year after year. And I hate bringing up the recruiting word, the R word, so many times, but that's what needs to change most at Florida. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Now, as I said, culture, I think, is a big part of this as well. And everything I've learned from Billy Napier seems to be a man who wants to do it the right way and has his approach of doing it and creating relationships with players, creating relationships in the community, creating relationships in the state that he's going to be in. And that's something else Florida needs. The reputation for Florida is not really the best in the state of Florida either, as far as going out there and making the best relationships with high school coaches and high school kids out there. That needs to be rebuilt as well. And for that to be a sustainable success at Florida, that's what needs to happen. And I think, for how he been able to build this. I mean, this was the only interview that I know of. This is the only interview a lot of people have confirmed that ever happened for Scott Strickland. So a lot of people can say, well, maybe he didn't do his due diligence and go out there and go interview multiple candidates and choose from multiple candidates who's going to be the best at the job. You could probably look at it that way, but you can also look at it and say he was so blown away by Billy Napier and his approach and how he was going to sell the University of Florida and the staff that he's going to bring in. And that was a big part of it too, is Chris Landry on Twitter put it out there that was part of Billy Napier's proposal to Florida. Here is the staff that I want to bring. Here are the type of people I want to bring. And that was the meeting that happened last Tuesday. Scott Strickland was blown away by meeting Billy Napier in person. Never interviewed anybody else. Was the only target. They worked it out. He became the head coach at the University of Florida a few days later.
And with that approach, they also take him off the table before anybody else can get at him, because it's not like Florida was the only one wanting Billy Napier. He was certainly in the mix and talked about concerning and connected to the LSU job and the Virginia Tech job. So he's well sought after regardless.
Mark, and about that, he waited his time. Like, he could have had an Auburn job. He could have had a Mississippi State job the last few years at Louisiana, especially last year. And then a couple years ago when Mike Leach eventually takes over at Mississippi State. But he didn't have to stay at Louisiana, but he wanted the right situation. He wanted to know a place he could go fit in, a place that would reciprocate everything that he wants, that they can give it back to him. Florida has the resources. Florida has the support. There's no questions about that. But, Florida need to look at themselves of how dedicated are they going to be to move the football program forward. They had fallen behind Georgia. They had fallen behind Alabama. There's no question about that. They need to have the right guy with the right direction, and everybody from the top to the bottom, Mark, needed to be on the same page. And that was something they needed to sell Billy Napier on. That was something he demanded, something he needed. And so the support's there, support's reciprocated from both sides. And that's why, you see this hire being made. And look, it's not going to be an instant fix. There's some issues to fix at Florida, but I think what you want to see are the things, the culture fit, the projection of the program, at least looking like, even off the field, like it's trending in the right direction. And those off the field issues should eventually pretty fast pay pretty good dividends for Florida.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown. If you enjoy Florida football, that goes without saying. That should be your number one destination. If you love the SEC, got to keep track of the best programs, college football in particular. Hey, head over to Gators Breakdown and check out David's work right there. It is funny what the talk is surrounding a coach who falls into a certain position, because with Dan Mullen, it was all about developing quarterbacks, offense, play calling. With Napier, it's culture, recruiting, building a program. So what could be the expectations of him salvaging a recruiting class here for 2022 in just over 2 weeks?
Well, he nailed the first one already. Quarterback commit Nick Evers, who shot up the boards this past summer, going into this past season. Highly rated 4-star recruit quarterback. Yesterday said he shut down his commitment. He's staying committed to Florida. So your biggest fish in the pond, you were able to land. And then Shamar James, even without a coach, Florida playing Florida State. Dan Mullen's no longer on the sideline. You have an interim coach on the sideline. Shamar James, who was a top 100 linebacker, previously committed to Florida, was not committed, or decommitted. Still visited Florida this past week. Was still in the swamp for Florida State. Christian Robinson, the linebacker coach, is in Birmingham, Alabama right now, where he is. Even so, the interest is still there for the University of Florida itself. And now Billy Napier is going to come in with some guys who still have interest in the University of Florida. Some top athletes who have some top high school football players who have recently decommitted from Florida. We want to try and get their interest back. But as I said, got their quarterback already in the fold, still in the fold, keeping that commitment. He's going to be making visits on Tuesday, whether they be virtual, whether they be phone calls. He's going to start communication with a lot of the recruits starting on Tuesday this week. Probably some, of course, closer in the Texas and the Louisiana areas. That's close drives, close proximity to where he's at now before he comes to Gainesville on Sunday next week and takes over the University of Florida job. But, Mark, there's still a lot of top options for Florida. He'll only have one full weekend, I think, before early signing day to make something happen. I wouldn't expect flips. I wouldn't expect guys to commit right on the spot. But what he can do, Mark, is delay. Hope those guys delay until February. If you have any interest in Florida whatsoever, hey, look, you don't have to sign right now. You don't have to commit right now, but give us a chance in January to get you back, to get you on campus. Delay that decision. Don't go early signing day. Go to the February signing day. Give us a chance. And that's going to need to be the plan. And I think whatever happens, I don't think we don't, especially the negative side of it. If it doesn't happen, if he is coming late, there is a lot to salvage with this recruiting class. I don't think we're going to ultimately judge Billy Napier on what he does in his first ever recruiting class of Florida, in his transition class. But if it's on the good side, you might can say, okay, well, he can hit the ground running. We already know that. What can he do with a year to build relationships for next year's signing class? So I think right now, Mark, it's really about coming in and trying to maybe delay some decisions until February.
Folks, David Waters Gators Breakdown, you got to check it out. I'll be on my laptop all the time, and I'll see that David's gone live or just posted a video or whatever it is, and I'll just open up another tab, listen while I'm doing my work, just lock it in, and check out their coverage of Florida football. One last thing about style of play. So based on what we know of Louisiana football and Billy Napier, do we expect a drastic difference in style of play either side of the ball?
For offense, Mark, I'd say more of the still kind of Dan Mullen dual threat running quarterback. That's kind of what you'll get here with Billy Napier as well. At least for the quarterbacks that's on Florida roster that he walks into. Whether Emory Jones stays or not, that's another conversation that we'll find out about. But Anthony Richardson will be on the roster next year as well. Your dual threat quarterback. He's going to be the guy, I think, leading the charge for Billy Napier's first offense at Florida. But, Florida, as I said, Nick Evers, the current quarterback commit, he's a passer. He is a pocket-style passer. He's going to throw it well before he runs it. Can he run it? Can he escape the pocket? Sure, but he's not going to be a run-first quarterback. He's going to be, wanting to throw the ball 40 times a game. Florida has a couple more guys on the roster like that. Carlos Del Rio, Jalen Kitna. So, whether Emory Jones is on the roster next year or not, I'm not really sure. To say he's not, Anthony Richardson is your dual threat quarterback. Everybody else, unless he hits the transfer portal for whatever reason, is more of what you consider a pocket style passer. So you may see similar offense that we've seen from Billy Napier these first 4 years at Louisiana. You may see that offense next year with Anthony Richardson, and if it takes off, it might be his only year starting in Gainesville. We'll see where it goes. But everybody behind Anthony Richardson, you'd have to say there would need to be a bit of a change there. But he's been in offenses that have that style. Go back to the time in Alabama. That's about when they made the shift to the Lane Kiffin throw all over the field style of offense there that Bama eventually adopted there. And there for defense, Mark, we'll see. I don't know if he's going to bring defensive coordinator that he has at Louisiana, if he's going to go go somewhere else. And Doug Belk's a hot name, Houston defensive coordinator out there. Somebody we were looking at to replace Todd Grantham when we still thought Dan Mullen may be the head coach next year. But they do have a crossing path history back at Alabama as well. Do Billy Napier and Doug Belk. So I think that's a name to look out for, as well as, and name escapes me right now, but the Oklahoma State assistant coach as well on the defensive side of the ball. He's getting a lot of buzz as well. But I think there's more of a history. I think we go back with Doug Belk, defensive coordinator at Houston, and Billy Napier.
Florida fans, you may want to check out the Sun Belt Championship game. Billy Napier will be coaching Louisiana against App State coming up this Saturday. All right, David, it's always a good time. We appreciate you stopping by, breaking it down for us.
Thanks, Mark.